Item C, receive oral update on development activity. Mr. Ackman.
Thank you, and good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Before I dive into the individual developments in San Bruno and the status of those developments, I wanted to give a bit of a context to the situation of the developments in San Bruno. As the City Council knows, during the development boom, which I would define in San Bruno at least, of 2002 through 2007, the city approved over 1,500 new units within the city of San Bruno. And a majority of those were constructed. There are some that are actually under construction right now at the crossing and at Summerhill and in other areas of town. And there's also a number of units that have yet to be constructed and are there's no immediate plans to construct those. And if you talk to developers about this, it's not really a demand issue. There's still a demand for housing out there within the Bay Area. That might not be the case for other areas of the country, but there still is a demand for housing within the Bay Area. For most developers, it comes down to a lending issue, both for lending for the developments of construction of the developments themselves, as well as for the people that are trying to obtain the loans. And although it doesn't seem as bad as it seemed perhaps in last November, it still does not appear that banks are lending money for large developments at this point. That's on the housing side, as well as the retail side. There's been very little movement in terms of new retail businesses, especially on the national front. Although we have seen additional inquiries within the past month or so. And before that, I would say from October of last year through just a month or two ago, people weren't even calling. There weren't even people who are looking to expand or even had the thought to expand. But we have seen some positive signs within the last month or two. And on the developer side, I would say within the last month or two, I've started to get calls from developers, especially interested in our transit corridor plan and what we're planning to do there. And I would say without that plan and what they're seeing, that what might come to fruition because of that plan, we'd be getting zero calls from interested developers at this point. So people are following along with that process. It doesn't look like the PowerPoint's coming on yet. I just had, it was basically a list of the different developments as well as photos from those developments, but you've seen most of them, so you'll be able to picture them. The first is a development that actually was never approved, but it was in the planning stages. It was a planning application, and that is at the Peace Lutheran Church site. And that is at the corner of San Bruno Avenue and Glenview Avenue, just north of the Glenview Terrace site. And it was a development proposal to basically split off half of the Peace Lutheran Church site and build 5 single-family homes there. It was originally applied about 6 months ago. They were going through the process. They were working as partners with the church, the developers were. Unfortunately, there was an illness within the developer's family. It was a family-owned business. Within the last 2 weeks, they actually withdrew their application. So that application is not going forward at this point. The church plans to move forward with a portion of their development, a portion of that application right now to make it more development ready. They plan to go forward with a lot split so they could go ahead and sell that lot to a potential developer, and that'll be easier to go through the process in the future. I'm going through these developments in order of the number of units. That one was 5 units. The second biggest development is the Cedar Grove townhomes. There's actually Cedar Grove single-family homes at 599 Cedar on the corner of Pepper. You may remember that this is the old Peninsula Christian Fellowship Church site. After a lengthy planning process, they were approved about a year and a half ago. Unfortunately, that developer went out of business. He was based in Bakersfield, and there aren't as many Bakersfield-based developers around anymore. At this point, the church is trying to sell the development. The 14 homes are on the market for $2.75 million. Skycrest, right south of there, 24 single-family homes. Half of them were built. There's people within all 12 homes. Only a small I think 4 of the 12 actually sold. The rest are being rented out, but they're being rented out for a good rate that's helping offset some of the losses the developer may have seen. The 12 additional homes, the developer says, will be built when the market returns. He's estimating it will be around 2012 at the earliest, but he's anxious to go once the market returns and move forward with the product that he originally proposed. Probably the most interesting project, the downtown cinema site. As you know, that's taking the place of the old cinema building downtown, as well as the 2 bars next door, and got approvals to replace it with 48 second and third story condos, as well as 15,000 square feet of retail. This one is paused too at this point because of lending. The developer first had American lenders that were interested. They fell through. He also had Chinese lenders that were interested. Those have not come forward yet. We talked to him today. He says that he has 2 new investors interested. They're talking to him within the next month or 2, and hopefully he'll have word back to us by the end of the year what the status of the development is. He still is anxious about it. It's just about getting the money together to actually construct it. One that the council has not seen yet, there's a condominium, actually an apartment complex on Whitman Way, across the street from Shelter Creek. It's a 48 unit, it's called Park Plaza Apartments. They originally got approval to become condominiums back in 1981. Shelter Creek came online at the same time, so they weren't as marketable. They pulled back their application after being approved. Now they're going, but they still had their state approval for the subdivision map, so now they're going ahead again for their local approvals. There has been an extensive outreach effort with the existing tenants. There's many long-standing tenants there. We have a number of provisions in our ordinance that help protect those tenants, especially senior and disabled tenants, and we're making sure that the developer goes by those rules. And actually, it's a pretty good, for being 25 years old, it's a pretty good condo ordinance in that it does protect the existing residents, many who have lived there for over 25 years. They're going to have a chance to be the first to buy. If not, they will get, they're able to stay there if they're seniors for over 5 years without rent increases. And other people who live in there will get moving expenses paid and up to 4 months paid in a equal apartment within the area. Merrimont, 70 homes. That's the old Carl Sandburg site. This one has been moving forward. It's been slower than expected, obviously, but all 70 homes have been, the building permits have been obtained. 39 have been completed at this point. About 30 have been sold. They came back and downsized about a dozen of the homes to a smaller footprint. And from talking to the developer, those actually sold right away because it got it to a lower price point, a smaller home, and they were more popular than some of the larger footprints that were approved there. The largest project that we have going on right now, it was recently named as the SNK's project at the crossing. It's known as Acapella, the Acapella Apartments and Condominiums. There are 2 buildings, a total of 350 units. 163 will be rented as apartments. Those should come. They were expected to originally come online in October. It's more likely that it'll be late November when they'll first be rented out, when we're able to give them a C of O for that building. The second phase of them, the 187 condo units, those will be coming online sometime of June of next year. I'd say early summer, sometime midsummer of next year, and those will be for the for sale product. Treetops. Obviously, this is the development that's impacted an existing neighborhood the most. This is a 308-unit apartment building that really wasn't built that long ago in 1985. It was vacated in 2005 and has sit vacant since that time. The City Council has approved 2 versions of this. They approved a 510-unit in July of 2007 with a particular architectural design. About a year later, the developer came back saying that construction was too expensive. They proposed a new construction type with a new parking plan. Unfortunately, because of the lending environment, that project never came to fruition either. They've come back to the city recently saying that they don't want to go forward. They most likely don't want to go forward with that 510-unit building at this point. They want to remodel the existing 308-unit building. So we're working with the developers at that time to A, secure the site, make the site as look as good as possible being a vacant site, while at the same time making the entitlement process fluid enough so that they could go forward at the earliest point to remodel the existing if that's the path that they choose. So we've been working with them over the last couple weeks to help that come to fruition. On the retail side, the council knows well that recently about a 12,000 square foot retail development was approved at the crossing. Spoke to the developer this morning. They pulled their building permits last week. They expect to start construction next week. That includes a 5,300 square foot restaurant, which will be the first tenant in there. Regarding other residential activity, overall, obviously, it's slowed. Larger residential additions, which are generally the ones that require use permits. During the peak years, there was about 70 to 80 use permits a year. We're now down to about 30 to 40, which is actually consistent with historically during the 90s and early 2000s, the number of use permits that we have. What we've noticed is a trend. People who were perhaps going to expand before are now doing remodels, making their existing homes nicer, or redoing the floor plans to accommodate their family, or just doing smaller additions, bump out single-story additions, rather than proposing the large additions. As I stated earlier in the presentation, since everything fell out last October, there's been little national type expansion or remodel of existing places. But an encouraging sign is that over the last month, there's been 4 national chains that have come to us with tenant improvement plans. Courtyard at Marriott, the Bay Hill Starbucks, Wells Fargo, as well as Old Navy have all have tenant improvement plans in, or are going to start construction soon. And they're not elaborate remodels, but it is good to see that some people are starting to spend money to fix up their existing commercial space. Regarding new businesses, I guess some would say on the opposite ends of the spectrum. At Tanforan, Hooters recently picked up their tenant improvement permit. They're expected to be open in December. Also at Tanforan, a store called Romper Room is going to open sometime. They're just pulling their tenant improvement right now. At first I thought it was a kids type clothing store, but it's actually a kids play area where you could go in, kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese type store, but a smaller footprint. There's also a new Brazilian steakhouse proposed that's currently on El Camino that's proposing to move down to where Kids Cut was located on San Mateo Avenue. The trend in San Bruno is a lot brighter than it is in other areas of the state. The state recently approved a subdivision map ordinance which extended developments that were approved during between 2005 and 2008, and automatically extended those map approvals for 3 additional years. An interesting idea that Burlingame have, and I think other cities are doing, is that not only they would match up that state approval of the subdivision maps and actually extend local approvals by a period of 2 to 3 years. That way, everything that was approved but is paused at this point, the developer would not have to come back and go through an entitlement process again, which would further delay development. So that's something that community development is going to be researching and coming back to the council perhaps at some point for your recommendation. So I could take any questions at this time.
Thank you for the update. Any questions?
To the chair. Aaron,
Ken?
you say that there's been some inquiry and discussion about the transit master plan.
Yeah.
Has there been any discussion about the vacancies that are in San Bruno Ave, that intersection where the grade separation will be? What I'm getting at is we've got vacancies, we've got some eyesores, and it goes all the way up to the western part of the city, where at what point does the city say enough is enough? I mean, we can't be just telling you to cut the weeds down and all that and clean up the properties. What point, can we, I don't know, force something on them? Because
regarding the first question that you had, yes. I mean, people have been interested in that area because the train station, what they tell me, and I think is an honest answer, is that at 3 stories, they can't make a development pencil. We're one of the few cities with that small of height limit that they could go other areas where you could build 4 or 5 stories and be able to actually get something to pencil, especially when you look at an area around a train station where you could really support those densities. And I think that's the idea behind the transit plan, to take a look at that. Regarding the other question, yeah, I mean, it's a difficult situation. You could get them to maintain your property. You could get them to keep it to a certain level, but you could use redevelopment in other ways to look at those properties and see what we could do as a redevelopment agency to help encourage those properties to develop. But that's something that we have to further explore.
Through the chair.
Councilmember Medina?
Just a comment. I appreciate this report. I'm sure the citizens do as well, because I think there's a lot for us to be updated. I know I get questioned a lot on various projects or things that are or are not moving and what their status is. So I appreciate this update and the thoroughness, as well as I would like to see this to continue to come back on a more regular basis, so we do have periodically, even if it's twice a year, so that not only us as the council, but the citizens that are listening can be updated on what's going on in their community.
Great.
Any other questions?
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Aaron.